Friends, family and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And as always, we're going to date stamp this. It's year 4, blog 41. In legacy numbers, it's my 197th blog, and it's dated the 30th of November 2025, and tomorrow will be first week of December. We're therefore only 3 weeks away from Christmas Day, which scares me and fills me with dread a little bit. Then again, if anybody has ever seen one of my Christmas specials will know I'm a little bit of a bar humbug and have been for quite a few years. It's nothing to do with what's gone on this year, but maybe I'll talk a little bit about that later on. And yes, I usually look out the window and I can see a totally different day to the rest of the week. It's blue skies, no rain, quite cold. My God, it's cold. And yeah, it's I suppose what you consider a typical late autumn type of day when we're actually in winter. So some blessings, isn't it? I mean, that's what you got to say about this. But there's not going to be much of a monologue on this one. It's been a mixed week. Nothing terrible, although you could think it is. But, you know, as I've said before, this is a diary of a sort, and it's always going to be on the thoughts and feelings that I have on the day. Now that has to be written in stone, because you have to understand that you could have something happen to you, you know, on a Wednesday, and on a Sunday it's gone past, you've forgotten about it, and it's a nothing thing. When you're rethinking about it, you have a totally different objectively point of view on it. And so that's why I have to keep stating that. Plus, a blog like this, or a diary, what you also probably have to understand is that you have to sort of know the story. You can't come in usually at 1 and then have an opinion on that. You know, you've got to look at the events that lead you up to this point. My mum is not in the same situation as she was when she collapsed. And if you were to look at her today, you would see a drastic change. If you saw that collapse, and know all of the story leading up to it, you'd say she's doing well. There you are, perfect example of what I'm trying to get at. And that's why when somebody might hear something that they object to, or say that's not true or whatever, they're not knowing the background behind it and the steps that lead up to it. It's one of those things that I mentioned before, you know, where somebody might see me in a way that is not me, you know, like be a bit stern, or my voice is raised or whatever, and think, oh, that's not very nice, is it? Oh, I've got now an opinion of him. And then come in years later and then basically go, but I've seen you be this way. And I could turn around and say, look, I haven't seen your life. You know, if I've only seen you twice this year, how can I tell that you are the same person as you were 6 months ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago? Life goes on, and all of these things have an effect on you, and they change you. I think that I've tried to make things a new norm each day. It's when you're at your lowest ebb, or your tiredness comes in, that basically they change you in a certain way. But there's enough to say about that. It's just something that I want to say, because that's what this blog is all about. It's what my week is, what makes me tick, what makes me keep going, what depresses me, what gets me to a low. And if you see it through 52, episodes of a blog that make up, a year, you'll see those changes. And I'm pretty sure if you look at the one in January and then you look at this one, it's a totally different feel. So that being said, I usually start off with the news. We'll get to me later on. But as always, I'll start off with the war, and I've mentioned it before. I'm considering dropping this on the Sunday before the New Year. After that, there probably won't be any mentions of the war until it ends, because I just don't see any end in sight into the early next year that makes me think I need to continue this, because I think at the end of next year, possibly, we'll still be in the same position. And I don't really want to keep reporting on this death, that death, this talk breakdown, etc., etc. It's something that, if you look in Wikipedia in the history of this, if you look at this in 10 years' time, you will see when it ended, you'll see when it started, and all of the stuff that I've been reporting will just be a weekly event, that tells you a little bit. So this is the news that was reported this morning, this very morning. There's not a week's worth of this stuff. And it says here that more than 600,000 people in Kiev region were without power on Saturday after a Russian attack overnight. Around 36 missiles and 600 drones struck key energy structures, killing 3 and injuring dozens of others. In retaliation, Ukraine hit Russia's Shadow Fleet oil tankers with a drone attack of its own. Peace talks are going to continue next week, with a Ukraine official arriving at the White House ready for the talks. Yeah, and I believe this Ukraine official is is a head general, I believe. I think he's either on his way or has arrived. Talks are supposed to be on Monday, but those things have broken down in the past. This attack on the Shadow boat, to oil tankers, that slows down the attacks. So, understand that. Russians attack on Kiev and put in 600,000 people with no energy. It's just war, and I want the war to end. So that's all I can say about it. And I just hope these peace talks do happen. But I think what Europe wants is for Putin and Zelensky and Trump to sit around the table and possibly have a member of the European conglomerate at that table to bash out some type of peace that sees this end. If you've got no Zelensky, it's not right. If you don't have, if you're just having Trump and Putin in some official, you have to wonder why Zelensky's not there. And then, because of the war has been breaching all sorts of borders that go into other areas of Europe, you need to really have another person from Europe at those meetings. That's how I see it. That's all I've got to say. Now, when it comes to UK news, the biggest news story total was the budget. Now, for anybody in America who might not understand this, we have generally 2 budgets. We have a sort of a mid one, but we have a big budget, and it's a budget for the year. And we've got a chancellor. This chancellor is Rachel Reeves. Rachel Reeves is the first woman chancellor, and she conducted a budget just as Labour had come in a couple of years ago, and it was not well received, because when you're in a party political election, you have a manifesto, and the manifesto points out what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. And when you see something U-turn, you go, oh, here we go again. Now, this budget, as I've written down here, says huge news dissecting Rachel Reeves' second budget of Labour's term, with many listing disrespect to all workers with hidden income tax policies, including a U-turn on electrical vehicles with a mileage tax, which is going to come in the next couple of years. So, yes, whenever you have a budget, there is always something that says, hey, we're doing this and your way of life is going to be better. The trouble is they hide it behind all sorts of other stuff, you know. So in this particular instance, they've done things in regards to bans on your wages, that if you get a pay rise and you go into this new band, then you're going to be in a higher band for what they call income tax. And these bands, if they're lowered, means that more people are more likely to go into that band, and then you're going to get a floodload of money in tax because you're going to be taxed more. So this band in particular is sort of like a mid-level band, around the 40 to 45,000 band. It's one that I'm in. And if I got a pay rise and I went into this particular band, then I would be taxed at a very higher rate. There you go. There's that happening. So it's not good, is it? Because, as mentioned, inflation is not great. The cost of food is skyrocketing. And if inflation and you only get an inflation type pay rise, and it doesn't cover what the rate of inflation is, then basically you're in a deficit situation already. And then if you go into this band, just because you had an inflationary pay rise, say it was like 2%, 3%, but it knocked you into that band, you're now going to be paying a higher tax. So you're going to be worse off. So you can imagine the budget was hugely speculated on. And the weird one was the electronic vehicles, because although this doesn't affect me, it should affect most of England in the next 5 years, as we have noticed that there are more pickups for electronic vehicles. Even some of my friends that I know on YouTube have picked up electronic vehicles this year and last year. So hybrid will probably be my next one if I can afford one, and then electric from there. But more than likely I might have to keep my car for longer and go totally electric when that comes round. They've put what they call a mileage tax on, and it's an absolute mess. So what they said was, when electric vehicles came on, is that they did an incentive plan where they'd give you this grant off of the cost of a new electric car. Now you can imagine electric cars are incredibly expensive, probably one of the most expensive vehicles on the road, in regards to even the lowest and smallest models. And there's been all sorts of problems, leading up to how good these electric vehicles are, because you've got to change probably the front of your house to include an electrical point. And then you've got to work out on a daily basis where the electric stations are, and there are now more of them. They've got them in one of the supermarkets that I know of in my hometown, plus they're in the centre of town in one of the major car parks. So there are those, but apparently you get taxed on using those. I think it's 20% compared to the energy increases that have gone up as well this week of 5%. So you can imagine there is a sort of a fuel tax because of the electricity that you use. But this mileage tax is something that will affect businesses. All those people, like people that have bought, say, ice cream vans, that used to be those diesel big vans that used to have a sliding window for you to get your 99 ice cream. Some of those have gone electric. We don't see many milk floats anymore, people delivering their milk to the front door step anymore, but there are many businesses that have got now electric vans instead of the old Ford Transit. I think the Ford Transit's gone electric. Yes, it has. Yes, for definite. And a lot of others, and even Amazon are heavily advertising that they've gone green. What you have to understand about this is now they have to succumb to going to an MOT testing centre to actually have their mileage checked and then pay a tax. Now, Labour say the reason for it is these vehicles are on the road, so they should basically help with fixing the roads. So that tax money will go towards fixing potholes, which they will be contributing to. And you can understand that argument. But what you also have to understand is that you had a manifesto that basically encouraged you to get this. You were going to pay zero tax on the actual vehicle. And now you're putting in a mileage tax. And what that means is that clocking of cars is going to come into this. What I mean by clocking is the odometer that basically is in your car that measures your mileage. Those could be clocked. You could clock them back. And you could do that with many cars. And I believe you could possibly do that with electric cars. I don't see any reason why not. There are safeguards for that, but those safeguards are generally broken pretty quickly. And so when you've got a vehicle that doesn't need to be MOT'd, because even a new car doesn't need to be MOT'd for 3 years, you've got to now make an appointment at an MOT testing centre to record your mileage. And you have to put that mileage in. As far as I'm aware, this is how it works. You have to put that mileage in using an app or some type of form. And at the end of if the MOT testing centre records a higher mileage or a lower mileage, will then tell you whether you've got to pay more tax or whether you're going to have a credit in place for next year. And the MOT testing centres are already quite busy. So you now have to go in for something that's not a full MOT, just to record a mileage to get it electronically processed and go out. And it's just a nonsense. So yeah, that's just that bit on the budget. I tried to look for something fun, something positive about this week, because it's all been deaths of playwrights that I really don't know too much about, but I hear that they're that particular death is very sadly noted, and a lot of people are talking about just how much that person will be missed based on his writing history. Died at 88, can't remember the guy's name, so I do apologise, but I'm not heavily into dramas and playwrights and so forth. But the only good story that I could see was that Cilla Black, a famous actress who died quite a few years ago, her wardrobe has been given to an auction house, and all of the money that's going to be coming from the sale of this wardrobe is going to go to charity. And that's a great thing, isn't it? And I believe it's all in connection with the sons and daughters of Cilla Black. In one particular, the son came onto the news and explained that a lot of this stuff was put into storage, and although there is some sentimental value on this, the family did go in and pick certain stuff. I believe a granddaughter chose 400 sets of shoes and took those away. And you can imagine, if you're a star like Cilla Black, who had to wear a different outfit every time she was on telly, she probably came away with 2,000-3,000 worth of shoes. So there's still going to be plenty left to go over. And I'm sure that the family have also noted their favourite episodes that have been on telly of Blind Date or the Cilla Black Show, and have chosen to keep some of that stuff, and the rest is just there for anybody. And I believe they come away with some type of authenticity of where she wore, you know, when that dress or outfit was worn. So somebody's going to come away with some bargains, I believe, here. They're not going to be like Marilyn Monroe's famous white dress, where the skirt was uplifted and all of that sort of stuff, which would raise millions. It's just very nice that charities are going to get something. And I just hope that the auctioneers also recognise that it is for charity and don't take away too much of the profits that you get from this for their time for selling this stuff. Well, I mean, I recognise they need a wage, but I also recognise that taxes will come into this. And this is where it becomes a bit bad again. So we won't touch upon those things, shall we? We'll look at it as being a good thing, and hopefully that puts a little bit of a smile, you know, on those proceedings. So I'm just going to take a bit of water, because my monologue part sort of like keys into this, because I want it to be known. It's the thoughts and feelings and a retrospective that I have in my mind of what's happened this week, and how I address these things. So it's usually broken up into 3 parts: a bit about me, a bit about my mum, a bit about work, and I'll get work out the way. Work was one of those times where I'm just continuing. It was the first full week really of my colleague after coming back after his illness. So I started off really not knowing quite what role I was in, but that's been clarified now, because there was a rota, but I didn't know that we were in that first week, is what I'm trying to say, because each week leading up to this, we've been filling in roles. You know, can you do this? Can you have a go at this? And cover while the person's still catching up. And so I chose the wrong role. I thought I was in a particular role, and I was actually on the one before it, which is called priorities, and therefore it's a bit difficult. Now, I also know it's the last week of the month, which means that a lot of activity occurs, because we've got end of month reports. I've got my figures that I need to make sure that I covered, and one of those targets for this month was to do 4 hours of training, and at the particular time I was at 2.5 hours of training, and I set myself a goal of 4. So that meant an hour and a half minimum this week to do training. And we were reminded that there was a spreadsheet that we all need to do, where we're deleting duplicate assets, and we'd sort of abandoned it while our colleague was away sick. So I concentrated on that a little bit, and I got an extra free. I was thinking it was like 250, I think, by the end of the week, of a 1,600 duplicate spreadsheet, of which I'd done 100 before that. So I've done close to 350 duplicate removals. And my colleagues at the moment, they've done around about 50 or so. So I've done quite a bit, which probably comes to show that when it comes to priorities, which are very reactionary, when they come in, they've got to be done. If they're not there, you're doing nothing of the sorts other than helping or going to meetings. That I'm more than likely to do more in that area. Now, my people manager starts tomorrow. That's a person who we've just employed, and she's a lovely lady. So I had to have a meeting with my old people manager and get what they call my PMR filled in, which is my performance for the quarter sorted. And he then had to have meetings with my new people manager to talk about the sort of I call it the baggage across of how my rules set is different to others, because I'm under what they call probation protected rules. I'm working for the MOJ, but I'm protected by the terms and conditions of the 2P process that happened 4 or 5 years ago. So you can imagine when she talks to me, I'm protected in a different way than the other two people in my team are, because they have an MOJ contract. But I work for the MOJ and I'm not a contractor, so there's a lot for her to take in. Excuse me. So, yeah, that's all that happened at the work this week. And, you know, there's not really too much to talk about other than that. When it comes to what's happened to my mum, say, sort of generally affects me. When it comes to Monday, you may remember a couple of weeks ago that the card for my mother was taken away, and I'd spoken to the bank and all of that sort of stuff, and we could only go so far. Now, after 2 weeks, and after a card has been stopped because of some PIN request that none of us has done, I'm very happy that they stopped the card. But I haven't been able to do anything, and in 2 weeks, if a card and a PIN has been sent and you haven't received it, you have to therefore go, oh, it's been stolen, and this person can get to my mother's money. So, of course, I had to not let it drop. It's one of those things that you've got to do. Not that I want to do, but I've got to do. And what you have to understand here as well is that my mum was getting slowly more harder for her to understand finances. And that happened after my dad died, because he died in 2016 and my mother didn't understand the finances. So I sort of like was the person that would open the mail, show it to her, and then explain what's going on. Now, that is not fictional tale. That's how it was. But this is where I go into, if you don't see that, you don't know it's going on, right? So you have to understand that, right? So at the beginning, when my mum's collapse, you know, my sister and I sat down, and my sister's husband was with her, and we were talking about how we were going to address paying council tax and getting the shopping. And of course, and my sister who's out of work, who doesn't work, and her husband that is paying a mortgage and everything's going, well, I can't help, I'm paying a mortgage. My opinion on that was, well, I'm paying rent. You know, it's less than what you're paying, but I'm on less wages than you. So, you know, and I've been paying bigger bills since my dad died, because we used to pay the Sky bill, say, between 3 different people. My mum, who was working, my dad, who was retired, and myself, who was working. So when your dad dies, the bill becomes 50-50. This is how it works. And so I said, well, then the only thing that I can do is use my savings. And it was agreed. Now, we talked about deputyship and all of that. We agreed that no person should have, without power of attorney, which there isn't any, should basically mean that not one person, not one sibling should take control of the money. And my sister was therefore going for what they call attendance allowance and all sorts of stuff. And I was happy for that, because she doesn't work. You know, I'm here at this house 24/7. My sister is not. She has to travel here, so attendance allowance makes sense. What I didn't know is that she ticked a box called appointee. Now, if you tick a box called appointee, it does have an effect on the bank. Now, what you have to understand with that is that was the reason why the card wasn't coming. They couldn't talk to my mum, they couldn't talk to me, or when they did talk to my mum, they know that she's got dementia and there's no power of attorney. And they pointed out to me that each time they've tried to raise the card, it's been cancelled. And each time it's been cancelled is because there's a tick box called appointee. And when I said, well, who's the appointee? They told me it was my sister. So, of course, I had to phone my sister and say, look, we got to have a chat. I'm not saying that anybody's trying to diddle anybody here, but we need to have a talk. And Tuesday was a bit of an argument. Now, what you have to understand with this is my sister's quite right in one area and I'm quite right in another. My area is I've been looking after my mum for 10 years and I've been looking after her bills, and I've been going to go and get the pension for quite a number of years. And no, and my argument was nobody told me that you tick this box and what it would mean. And her argument is I'm not the exchequer of my mum's wages. it's wrong that we're using her card, as the banks have pointed out, and therefore she will not. She thinks the banks are in the wrong. I don't know how you think that, and that no changes are going to occur. And I said, right, well, who's going to pay then the council tax then? Because I'm not. Simple as that. So we went back and forth. It's a bit like this. It's a colliding thing, right? I see my sister's side, I see my side, but all I want is things to go back to norm, where her money is not being touched, but only her pension is. We do this. So there was 3 choices. You know, I said, well, I'm going to step back. You can do it all. And pretty much I'm going to cut back as well on what I'm doing, because I'm doing so much and it's not fair. Or we get that, you phone up the bank and you tell them to send that card and we go back to the way things are. Or a third one, how we deal with the appointee bit. And it was agreed, you know, where, you know, the benefits, you know, the state pension can be moved into what they call a slush account. I recognise what slush accounts are because of my time working for the banks for 16 years. So the state pension goes into where they call the appointees account, where her appointee money goes into, and I will get a card to get the money out. The money that I'll get out will be just the state pension money, and of course, and therefore we will go back to the way it was, and there is no therefore touching of mum's money. And that was an acceptable thing. I just turned around and went, yeah, there we go. And so you have to turn around and say something that could have been a really major argument turned into a clearing of the air and a way forward. Now, I don't know how long that process will take. I've already turned around and said, I need that money back. Any money that I'm going to be paying, I'm going to get back. You can't expect me to pay all these bills and you're not paying a penny. And therefore, you know, if that was agreed, and I think it is, although I'm still in two minds whether it is, because my sister goes quiet or ums and ahs, right? And I never get a true story. But I went, that's fine, you know, and as long as that happens, then I'm doing what I was doing before, which is just keeping this going, right? The money that we get from the state pension does not cover everything that we need. I will continue to do that shortfall, but it does stop me from saving. And at some point, my sister has got to understand, as much as I can go for a mortgage when my mother does eventually leave this earth, and I don't like talking about that, 4 or 5 times your annual wage is how they normally come up and say you can get a mortgage, is fine. But what you've got to understand is I have a end date for pension. I do not want to go over that end when I've got people and friends that are turning around and saying, I'm going to try and get early retirement. Fat chance of that for me. All I want to do is end my days living in the house that I've been living in now for more years than I've lived anywhere else. Now, I've only lived in my own property for 7 years and moved away for 1 year, living in somebody else's house while I was doing a job in London. So that's 8 years of your life outside of your family house. My sister's been outside this family house for 30 plus years. And what you have to understand with that comes money that I've put into this house and rent that I've been paying. But a mortgage pays off your house, and that means that you're decreasing what you have to pay at the end when you retire. If it's say I retired at 70, and my mother dies in the next couple of years, I've got a huge mortgage to pay that I can easily get the mortgage requirement for, but because I only have to pay half the house. But I've got probably around a quarter of 25 years to pay it. And that means huge sums that I could never come up with. And hopefully my sister's going to understand this. Hopefully she's going to not turn around and go, we're following 100% what my mum wanted in the will. And the reason that I say that is that it's an unfair thing where I've been paying for fence repairs, roof repairs, all of that sort of stuff. And everybody in this family knew I don't care about anything inside this house other than my own stuff. But the house is where I want to end up with my life. And when I die, in my will, I've perfectly set out that it passes on to another family member. It goes to no one else. But to have somebody turn around and take half the equity of this house away because it's their right is a bit unfair. It just shows just how much you feel about the other sibling. Do you see what I mean? But that's another story. That's another time, and that's one of the stresses that I've lived under for about 20 years. And I wasn't there at the will writing. My sister was. She wasn't in the room when my mum went in, but was it explained to my mum, those feelings? I don't know. But there is fair and there's unfair. That's how I look at it. And I'm one of those people that just say, do you have to have it in a lump sum? Can I give it you in bits and all of that sort of stuff? Because I just don't think I'm ever going to be able to get 250 or whatever it is, 1,000 together in such a small amount of time. But anyway, I live in this house for a year after my mum dies, and there's propagation and all sorts of stuff. So that's really my mum, other than we continue to use the new regime to get her up. Wednesday was a problem because for some unknown reason, and I think it's because I've been leading up to being unwell this week, I overslept for the first time in 15 years. And the alarm clock that I use, I'll just show you this quickly, is this old iPhone, right? It's just it exploded. So the battery exploded, lifting the glass and everything, right? So that knocked the alarm from working. So I had no alarm, and I'd put the phone on silent before that happened on one of my other phones. So that's another reason. But I've got plenty of phones, and that's replaced now as an alarm. But it happened on Wednesday, and of course that caused disruption because it was a day when my sister couldn't get into the house, so she was concerned. And secondly, we had the occupational health person coming to have a little look and see how my mum gets up in the morning. And therefore, me being late, plus even later because the occupational health person needed to see my mum get up, and my sister concerned about my mum and me. She assures me about me as well, and I totally get that. She called the police, and I get that as well. So Wednesday was a bad day for me, but a fantastic day as well. And I'll explain that in a bit. So we've got that at the beginning of the week about the appointee. You've got that where I didn't get up. And on later on in the week, I've just noticed that my mum is eating less. I'm trying to change that. I'm giving her maybe a slightly bigger meal at the end of the day because I'm seeing her pick at food at the weekends during the day, but it was brought to my attention more on Friday. But you have to understand what Friday was to me when we get to me. So that really ends sort of like my mum's position, and then there's me. So what happened to me this week? Well, there's all that I told you about with the appointee bit, so we'll get that out the way. And there's also the bit where I overslept, so we've got that out the way. On Wednesday, again, I called the DVLA. Now, I left it till Wednesday, and I thought I'll give them a couple of days on this. And what happened was, when I phoned on Wednesday, and it took a long time to actually get them to call me back, I think it was over 2.5 hours this time after putting myself in the queue, the person actually recited back to me that from the following day, so this was a Wednesday, I could drive. The doctors found no problems and I could drive. I went, hallelujah. So I had a little chat with the guy and I said, look, I've got a complaint that's in there. I still want that to go through. But the other thing that I'm disappointed with, I said, was how have you sent this notification to me? He said, by post. And I said, have a look at the notes. What does it say? And it says, and he read out, it says, please notify by text, phone call, email, post. Right? All of the bases covered. So I said, exactly. So when did this letter go out? He told me it was sent out the morning of the day before, so that was Tuesday. And I said, exactly. So I phoned you Wednesday afternoon, and you're telling me in a day and a half you haven't got to the point of actually contacting me, so I had to make another phone call. So then he comes back and says, you do know you can check this online. And I'm going, look, I'm not. If you look at the notes, I'm not going to have an argument because I'm happy. But if you have a look at the notes, it says you're always behind on the web. And every time I go on the web, it's disconcerting because it always only ever says you can't drive. And you have got the most up-to-date news. And that's proved by the fact that you've just told me that I can drive. So I said, I'm disappointed again. All those tick boxes there, you've known for a day and a half. So as far as I'm concerned, your process is broken. Your policies are broken. Thank you for notifying me. And he said, after that, he said, by the way, you will have to apply for your picture license. And I said, no, I don't. Read your notes again. And he read his notes. And I said, you'll see that I applied for this in September. You've got that. So basically, it's to you to send it out to me. Can I still drive? He said, yes. So I said, right. So I'm not going to apply. You go away. Tell the people that all that's in place. If I don't get my picture card or whatever it is. And he said, no, you don't need a picture card. You've just told me. Use your old one. Nothing's changed on it. I went, right. Okay. Thanks very much. Bye. That was the end of that call. So I then put a plan in place. My mum used to like fish and chips on a Friday or a Saturday. One of the two. I could drive. Yay! So I said, although I can't go at night, which is when she used to get her fish and chips, I can go at lunchtime. So I'll take away my walk this week on Friday, and I'll go and get fish and chips. And I'll get you a bag, my sister. Right? So I got my sister a bag of chips. I'll get mum a little mini fish and chips. Just a small bag of chips. And I'll get myself a bag of chips. And we'll all have bags of chips. Right? So Friday came along and I went down. And of course, they all know me in there. And we had a little chat. And he went, oh, wow, I didn't know things were like that. My God. Please wish your mum well and from me and all of that sort of stuff. So I handed over my money. And it was £13. £13 for that. Mini fish and chips. A bag of chips. And chips with a little pot of beans. Right? £13. Things go up, don't they? There you go. It wasn't even a big fish. It's mini fish. So anyway, bring them back. And that's when I noticed, because when I come out at 4 o'clock and my sister's gone, you can see what's left on the plate. And she'd had a little bit of the fish and she'd had a few chips, but less than a third eaten. So the only people that ate really was my sister, me, and my mum had a third of what she had. And it just makes you feel sad, because I looked forward to that moment for about 2 days. I've got a surprise for your mum on Friday. You get up, you got a surprise coming today, all that. And it doesn't make a dent. Do you know what I mean? So I've got to expect these things. Yeah, so I just want to talk a little bit in regards to the end of Friday. And on the end of Friday, I had the lovely knock at the door from my aunt and my cousin. And when my aunt and cousin came in, we had a little chat about what's going on. But there were also little bits that concerned me in regards to, conversations. It was like, try not to have arguments with your sister, all of that sort of stuff. And what you have to understand about that is that you don't know whether the same thing is a conversation has been had with my sister. And so it does seem like a thing that's being pointed out to me as if I want that. And of course I don't. And what you have to understand is I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that what I wanted was people to understand that if people see something, they're not seeing what caused it, all the bits that lead up to it. And what you have to understand is arguments happen between two people. It's not one person. One person doesn't cause it. And if it makes it out that that's how it's being portrayed, then it's wrong, because that just makes me feel like I'm always in the wrong when I'm not. You know, there are right and wrongs and opinions and points of view. And if you just see one person and the other person's not seen, it's wrong. You know, it's the same sort of thing that if there's an argument at work between two people and you only saw one person and that person's talked to, and then the person asks the other one to come in and say, right, you're going to change. That's wrong. You have to get them both in, talk about it, and basically understand that that nonsense has got to stop and go away and do some work and forget this nonsense. And that's pretty much how that's happened at work in relation to disagreements. So, all those things about not knocking on the door and seeing me and all of that sort of stuff was noted, and we came away happy. And I looked forward to seeing my cousin and seeing my aunt again. And I said, please knock on the door, press the button, whatever. If I am at work, it is difficult, but they also know that I'm a carer, so there are interruptions that will happen, and I'm quite happy to have little chats and stuff. What I don't like is when a person comes in and they just have one chat every week with the same person and don't find out about whether the other carer's all right. That's what I don't like. So that's that out of the way. And pretty much that's it. I'm so glad, really looking forward to seeing my cousin, really looking forward to moving forward from all of this. And now I've got my driving license back, I feel a lot more freer. I can go up and see my dad's grave for one thing. There's something. I can go and do the shopping again. I don't have to get online shopping, all sorts of stuff. So hey, let's say we ended on a good week, hey, shall we? That's the best, isn't it? The way to actually look at it. So yeah, I've come away quite happy. And you could sort of like look at it as being a real dread. So that's that out of the way, shall we? Let's get to the shout outs. Okay. And like anything, I just want to wish everybody a big thank you for watching the blog. It keeps growing in strength all the time. The comments can rise and fall like anything. In this particular instance, there's less this week than more. But even I know that looking at YouTube, some of the channels that I've watched, there's been less actually out there, and a lot of it is blamed on flu, colds, and all of that sort of stuff. And from that point of view, even I know that I had a snivelly nose on Saturday. My God, and Sunday I feel worn down, but my nose blockage has gone, so I know that it was just a 24-hour thing. But other people are going through flu and weeks of cold and all of that sort of stuff. And I put down generally that me walking in the cold weather and me living in a cold room and all of that sort of stuff has probably built my immune system up a little bit. I am concerned because I've had a heart attack. So, and of course my new health condition as well puts me in the bracket that I should have a flu vaccination. But at the end of the day, I feel actually good today. I don't know if you can see, I don't look tired, don't feel tired. The longer this blog goes on, you'll probably see that change. But that's because the underlying problems I've got have not been addressed yet. So there we are. So all I want to say is everybody has commented, thank you. All those people that wanted to contribute or comment, thank you for trying. You know, no, I don't, mind that they don't. I mean, they can comment or not. But to be quite honest, all of these people made a comment, and fantastic for doing so. And they are, and I'll read them out in no particular order: Wee Bob Art, Ian Hill, The Ramblings, Carl Todd, Martroid, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, and Robert's Retro Gaming. So you'll see that there's probably a couple in there that you go, yeah, but where's Steve's Gaming? Where's Denny? Where's all of that? They're full of cold, flu, stuff going on in their own environment. All of that sort of stuff takes them away. And they understand that from my point of view, because this week I was so happy that I got a little video out, which is the Steve and Del Boy challenge, and I've been meaning to do that for 3 weeks. We've had fireworks, we've had all sorts of stuff going on that stopped me from doing it, looking after my mum, and I finally found time to actually do it, got it out there, and there it is. All out there, and it's taken that long to get to it. So, yes, there's an extra video from me this week, and I'm hoping there'll be an extra video every week. This is not just a blog channel, it's a retrospective. So, I need to get some of the stuff that's been such joy to me for years and years out there, which is why I love doing the Wednesday stream with Ian. I don't know where I'd be without that. He's such a supporter of me, and I do that every Wednesday, and I should also therefore be encompassing that into my own channel, where I talk about films and the other big love in my life, which is games, or computers, tech in general, and other stuff, comics, statues, all of that sort of stuff. So you have to understand, all of that is not being told at the moment because it's out of my hands a little bit. So I'm going to shut up now and start reading about the comments, and they're not in any particular order, but here we go. So the first one here is from Wee Bob Art, and he's put, "Hi Del, not sure if I am too late." No, not at all. Hope you and family are doing as well as can be expected. I bought myself a one-up arcade machine this week, and the LCD driver board arrived yesterday. So I've been spending a lot of time modding it. I hope to do a video. I hope you do. I like the one-up arcade videos. I've seen many being built, especially the Outrun ones. I think I saw a Dragon's Lair one being built, and I saw a Ghosts and Goblins one, because those are the free ones that just cropped up and I was mainly interested in. So I'm wondering what your one-up arcade is. I hope to do a video. I have a new phone, which is so much better for doing YouTube videos. So hopefully I can use that once I am complete. Absolutely marvellous. I wanted to... this is a bit of a story, right? I've been talking all week to my phone provider because it's Black Friday and I'm out of contract. Couldn't get a deal up together one bit. I phoned 4 times. They phoned me back twice. And both of those times were the people that want to keep me. And each time the loyalty keeping people phoned me up, they just kept going, sorry, this is the maximum that I can do, and all of that sort of stuff. And I kept pointing out to them that if I was to actually do a search for deals, I can get £10-15 cheaper than what you're offering. And I'm pretty sure that if I left you and came back, I'd get a better offer. And you can't deny that. And he couldn't. He turned around and said, my hands are tied on what I can do. This is what I can do for you. And I said, well, I'm glad I've got the pack code. You've got till Friday to call me back. I made one more call on Friday about this, and I got no call on Friday. So on Saturday, I started looking around and I found myself a deal. So I've got that happening. I had to do it. I need to reduce my costs to help my mum. And I've knocked it down by about 30 quid. Now, this is what happened with EE. When you're out of contract, all of the perks, and I got something called an EE perk for working for the MOJ, which is 20% off of my airtime, went. And they continued to charge me for the phone that I'd already paid for 2 years, plus the airtime, plus the increases on that airtime, which meant that where I was paying 70, 80 quid, I was paying 115 the last time they took the money out. So I said, another incentive to leave you. So I'm glad I left in the end. They may well be the best network in the last 12 years, every year for the last 12 years. Don't give a shit. Your customer service is pretty rank. So, gone. And there we go. I got a deal, and I got last year's phone in with that deal. and I only have to pay for 12 months of that. So in other words, I'll only be on airtime for the last 12 months of the contract, which means that I will double down on the cheapness come next November. So I've got myself a newer phone, but it's last year's model, and I've got myself the phone price dropped for this year, and it will drop like a stone in November next year. Win-win. So that's just that little story there. Just to reiterate, I hope that works out well for you. Your phone is recording better. You can record onto your phone, but there is also something called Droid Cam if you want to still use OBS. So that's good. And of course, I hope the editing suite and everything that's on your phone is great. Look forward to those, matey. That would be brilliant. So you have a new phone, yeah. Anyway, question you've put. If I am not too late. If I am, don't worry about it. But the question is, I watched a movie called Begonia with Emma Stone. Oh, God, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah. Really enjoyed it. It is a movie that some people will love and others will dislike, I think. What movie do you love but is quite Marmite across general opinion? All the best wishes. Right. An easy one is Star Trek the Motion Picture, because that really is Marmite. I mean, it was considered the slow motion picture and all sorts of stuff. But with the 4K and a greater appreciation of what it was trying to do and what it wasn't, has turned many critics around, but it's still considered not a brilliant picture. To me, it's a brilliant picture. I do recognise its follies, but no film is perfect. If you've got the perfect film, then you've reached the pinnacle and there's nowhere else to go. I haven't come across one film yet which is the pinnacle drama, the pinnacle science fiction, the pinnacle horror, the pinnacle comedy. No, we continue to try and excel. So there's one. Another great love of mine is Spider-Man, and everybody considers the third one to be a mixed film. I agree. It's not the best. It's far from the worst. At the time it was, because there were two before it that were fantastic. This is in the Sam Raimi trilogy. And its biggest folly really was probably a bit of interference by the film studio and Marvel. Too many characters, too many stories going left, right and centre, and so a weak ending and a character that I don't feel should even have been in it. And Sam Raimi agreed he didn't want this character in, and the character I'm talking about is Venom. Far too early to bring Venom in. That's studio interference. What they did with Venom was okay, but too early. You hadn't even got to half the characters that you need to bring in, Electro and the Vulture and all sorts of stuff. And Venom is a character that didn't come in until around about the 30th anniversary of Spider-Man's existence. He's now in his 60th. So you can imagine Venom's been around for 30 years, but for 30 years he wasn't even thought of. So you've got a lot of history. And yes, the stories in the movies are different. And you can bring them in whenever you want. But a lot of people that watch a Spider-Man movie want to watch something that they grew up reading. And I grew up in an earlier time. And other people that were seeing it grew up in that time that Venom was there. So I get it. It's just you had Sandman in it as well. And you had another goblin brought in. And, you know, it was, so they had 3 villains. You only had one in all the other, you know, for most of the others. So, yeah, I think that's a Marmite one. A film that I don't love, but again, I don't find bad is War of the Worlds with the Tom Cruise one. It is really nothing like the book, nothing like the musical adaptation. But again, Some people love it and some people hate it. Some people don't like it, goes away too much from the book. Other people love it because it's all special, the lovely special effects, and you see the one character go through it, just like you saw in the book with and the original film in regards to the newspaper man and you know, and all of that sort of stuff. And the same ending happens to the Martians, but there is some changes, like they've lived under the ground for years and have woken up and all of this sort of stuff, which even I don't like. But as a whole, I can watch War of the Worlds on 4K on my telly and come away entertained. But other people, whoa, worst piece of shit I've ever seen in my life, you know, all that sort of stuff. And that goes for the next one, Big Trouble in Little China. Some people, including me, have gone from being elated to finding it still entertaining, and there's other people that always turn around and say, what a pile of shit that is. So I'm I find it entertaining now. I used to really, really love it, Big Trouble in Little China. I still think it's a good film. I've watched it now a couple of times in the last 2 years, and I don't know if it's because of my mindset, but I'm not like I was when I first saw it, where I thought, this is fantastic. I don't know whether it's because it's a different feel for Carpenter. John Carpenter, by the way, the director. But the story is okay, you know, looking for a green-eyed woman, you know. But Carpenter's never really done martial arts and Chinese mythology and all of this before, and you've got the East-West collide type thing going on. You know, you've got Kurt Russell, very much Americanized, and you've got the other side, which is all about you know, a bit of mythology with characters that can fire lightning out of their eyes and hands and stuff. It's a bit of a convoluted type of structure, but back in the day loved it, and now I find it a very entertaining film, and one that I'm quite happily go back to. But some people will go, what's this pile of drivel? I never try to sway somebody's opinion, but I will say this: it's different, we need difference, and it's done incredibly well. So I'll always look at it like that. And it's the same for the next one, Predator 2. Predator 2 comes to mind. I mean, when you consider the first one, in a jungle with Arnie, and we're up against the unstoppable Martian. Typical thing. But so well done, you just got to love it. And it's a cult, and it's fantastic, and there's lots of interesting premise in there. The second one has got a not so muscular character, but an equally great and engrossing character, Danny Glover. And the jungle is replaced to the jungles of the cities. Another great step. And you've got the Predator itself, always menacing, better effects on the whole, although the end, I think, is showing its age. But universally, they turned around and said, what's this? This is not what I was expecting. It's because people's expectations at that particular time, and still are to an extent, where's Arnie? Where is that muscle-bound character with all the guns and all of this sort of stuff going on? It's not that film, so I'm going to pan it, right? And you don't want to do things like that. You need to look at what the film is trying to do. And it did that really quite well. The urban jungle replacing the actual jungle. And what the Predator is all about. Trophies, honour, that sort of thing. So I like Predator 2. I get totally entertained every time I watch it. And it gets a bad rep. Watch some of the other Predator ones to see probably an even more Marmite experience. And the last one, even though there are many more I could bring into this, I could bring in Prince of Darkness and a load of others, I'm going to talk about Prometheus, which is an Alien prequel. Oh my God, was that panned a lot when it came out. if you think about the premise, what you're trying to do is say, okay, we've got this indestructible alien. It's the fighting machine that we have very little defense on. But you have to ask the question, where did it come from and why? And we've gone down the route of getting to a point where the alien has reached Earth, but now we can step back a little bit and go, well, where did it come from? And we can get back to that point later on. The trouble is, we're not getting to that point back on. We're still in this middle ground. So the bad thing about Prometheus is it stopped us from getting to that end point, which I totally agree with. We need to go back, right? And the TV series Alien Earth is not it. So you've got Prometheus, you find out about where they came from, and it's supposed to then lead into another film that sort of explains why. And it's got some great effects. It is a bit of padding. There's the sound is great. I went to the pictures and I came away going, it wasn't what I was expecting, but it's part one of a story that's obviously going to lead up to Alien. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, and I've given it the benefit of the doubt all the way up to now. And actually now it's grown on me more because the next film was worse. And that's where I totally sort of like agree a little bit that the follow-up to Prometheus is not great. Not bad, but definitely if you consider this one to be a piss poor film, then you'll be, I don't know what you must be swearing at the screen right now about the follow-up a lot more, because Prometheus is not that bad a film to me. Only these are all my opinions. In the way it looks and the way that it's told and the way that it sounds, absolutely nothing wrong with it. It is just padded, and you still at the end ask questions. But the problem is you have to ask questions because it's going to be another film. The next film is the one which you need to aim, ready, aim, fire. Do you see what I mean? So that's all I can say about that, really. What else can I say? I think that'll do. I mean, I've given you some ideas there and some probably good things to talk about there. And I hope Wee Bob that you're okay. Salute to you, my friend. Anybody that doesn't know Wee Bob Art, he's got his own channel. He's mentioned it in there. He's a great artist, and he does talk about films and do community questions. And he's coming back. He's got himself a new phone, as you said there. So look out in the next, however long it takes, a couple of weeks, I should think, or just after Christmas. I'm really, really looking forward to his insights. And he's a big supporter of Ian Hill, The Ramblings, and myself. So thank you very much, Wee Bob Art. My salute to you. And we will move on now to Ian Hill, The Ramblings. Let's see what he's put. He's put, "Hi, Dalboy. Hope you and your mum are doing okay. I'm really happy for you that you can now drive." Yes, because he found out on the Wednesday that I could drive. So he's put that in there, even though I said to him, you could put, "I'm just glad for your news," and I could then talk about it in this blog. But anybody who read those comments knows a little bit before this blog, but that's fine. It's not a problem. "It was an awful situation for you to be in, and it's an essential part of your life and for caring for your mother." It is, and I'm so glad that that's out the way. "I've had a mixed week in terms of my health. The legs are now virtually healed. However, I've been finding in bed that my heels are very painful, which is ruining my sleep. I've tried loosening the bandages and stockings, but that's not really helped. I also told my nurse I'm not going for any more pointless appointments that last a few minutes. The time and effort to get to them is too much. In the end, she agreed, so I won't be going now until well into next year. It was annoying when I have it constantly on my mind. Now I feel so much better and can enjoy my chocolate fix. I bought a large Aero. Just what I needed. I love it when people go into detail like this. It's brilliant. I watched as usual quite a lot of things. Highlights were I've watched as usual quite a lot of things. Highlights were the free series of American Horror Stories, a great anthology horror collection of stories. I think there were only 2 or 3 weaker stories. I felt very fresh and original. And if I can interject there, it is. American Horror Story is okay. I watched that when it was on Sky. Somebody pointed out to me that Creepshow was brought as an anthology show. It went up to 4 seasons of that, and I love those. If you haven't watched those, Ian, definitely watch those. But I'm glad you got some enjoyment out of that. You sent me a download of a film called Vicious. Love this horror film involving a box and 3 instructions. It's one of those ones where there's a mythology behind a box and all of this sort of stuff. It's nothing new, but I watched it, thought it was quite enjoyable, and I thought that Ian would get great enjoyment out of it, and it looks like he did. The next film was a Western called Chucker, 1967, starring Rod Taylor. It was set at the time in the 1860s Indian Wars, and for a change in these films, it was the Indians who triumphed. Yeah, always good. We have to think about this and go, was always these cowboy and Indians, the cowboys always won? No, good to know that there's a balance, even if it's a bit one-sided most of the time. The next film was The Craze, 1990, starring Martin Kemp and his brother Gary Kemp. They did a great job portraying these gangsters, especially being musicians from the band Spandau Ballet. I loved all the period details in the film. The film ended at the funeral of the death of their mother, brilliantly played by Billy Whitelaw. I always remember how Barbara Windsor had been friends with them. So this led me to where all this began. Yes, The Craze were on TV actually about 2 months ago, and I mentioned this to Ian during one of the streams. He might have forgotten. And I do like The Craze. It's a film that I saw on Channel 4 initially. I missed it at the pictures. I think it's a 19... Did he say it was a 1990 film? I'm pretty sure it was. Yes, it is a 1990 film. My friends went to see it. If I remember rightly, I was ill. I did see it on rental, and then I saw it on Channel 4. It is interesting. I thought the brothers did really well. I like the cast. You've got a very great actor in it, which you would think was feel out of place. He used to be in Nearest and Dearest, a TV comedy series, and it was all about the pickling factory. But anyway, he played the granddad, and he was boxing and all of this sort of stuff. And there's a big boxing scene in this where one of the brothers goes in to see if he can last 3 rounds, which he did. But then the other brother decided he wasn't going to get in. So these 2 brothers are in the centre of the ring, knocking the shit out of each other. It was stopped by the referee and a member of the family. And then the mothers came along to give him a good telling off. It's just really good. I have no idea. It's sort of like it's supposed to portray the conflict between the 2 brothers, which you see later on in the film. But it's got interesting angles like that. And any film that sort of makes you think about things, I think are great. And that's why The Craze is a good film, in my opinion. You continue. I watched Sparrows Can't Sing, 1963, which was filmed in their club and featured Barbara Windsor just before she joined the Carry On films. I think it was Carry On Spying. I love this film too. It's a post-war period full of houses being demolished and new high-rise being built. It was great to see the locations and shops. They just bring back so many childhood memories of Leeds, and particularly the areas of Barnley, Stanningley and Pudsey. The cast in the film also included James Booth, George Sewell, Roy Kinnear, Brian Murphy, Eupha Joyce, Bob Grant and Stephen Lewis. Yeah, what a cast. I mean, you've got On the Buses in there, you've got George and Mildred in there, you've got, I don't know, Roy Kinnear, you've got George and Mildred and Dick Emery in there, you've got, wow, I mean, Stephen Lewis, I mean, Blakey, I mean, Christ. such a cast. And absolutely fantastic, and especially around that period, which isn't talked about too much, post-war, and around about the 50s and 60s, which is a period of growth and stifledness. So, yeah, fantastic. So, anyway, you continue. So my question this week is, why did this housing policy fail when old slums were replaced by high-rise flats, which became the new slums? What is progress? Is there a failure in social policy? Does it reflect on society? Does science lead to progress? All my best wishes to you and have a grand time. Wow, what a lot of questions in there. Wow. I only know a little bit about this period of time. If I remember rightly, where the British went over to Germany to help them build as a sign of peace and prosperity, over here, our houses were equally demolished, and we needed fast housing as fast as possible. If I remember rightly, there was a policy that was created, I think, a couple of years after the war, and it gave control to the councils. This is all I know. I don't know too much about this. And all I can say about that is that there was problems with land ownership. And they built on those lands very, very slowly. And to aid with this, they put money into high-rise flats, which totally changed socially how we lived, and didn't aid with the fact that after the war, there was a baby boom. It was actually called the baby boom. So there were more babies being born, people living in a closer, confined in more area, and the councils fighting over where you can build because of ownership of the land. So yeah. So you've got a slow uptake on building. There's a major issue, and you're building inferior tower blocks, which even are in our landscape today. So I would say that that's possibly it. It's the policy that came out after the war in regards to ownership of land that I think is the culprit here. And the baby boom didn't help. I didn't come out of the baby boom. I was born late 60s. The baby boom is late 40s to mid 50s, if I remember rightly. Again, dates and stuff, you'll have to excuse me. I can only remember so much. But that's how I look at it, and that's all I can say about that, Ian. Does science lead to progress? I've always felt it does. But is science involved much in this particular question? Probably not so much, although there must have been some engineering questions in regards to building the high towers. And a lot of science would have come into the building of our motorways, which were also built on the top of the demolition of London and other cities. So, yeah, science does move us forwards. We wouldn't have Voyager's missions. We wouldn't have man landing on the moon. We wouldn't have our computers and YouTube allowing us to do these types of broadcasts without science moving us forward. I just wish sometimes that some of that money would go into better places like diseases and that sort of stuff. I'm a big follower of dementia, medicine, cancer, heart defects, and what we're doing about those, along with HIV and the rest. So, the big ones I look out at in regards to science. And God help us if we have another pandemic. But those are man-made, aren't they? At the end of the day, the last one was a man-made thing. As far as I'm concerned, anyway, before we start getting into speculation on that. Anyhow. Salute, my friend. Thank you so much for all your support. Thank you for allowing me to be on your show on a Wednesday. Long may that continue. and see you very shortly. Thank you very much, Excelsior. So the next one is from Carl Todd, but unfortunately it is just what it says, placeholder for future comment. And obviously Carl is very busy, didn't quite get to that one, and that's fine. These things occur. And we move on therefore to my friend Martroid, who's put, hey Del, how often do you usually upgrade your phone? I'm still hanging on to my old iPhone 6S. It was brilliant back in the day, but I'm now frantically saving up for a 17 Pro Max. Wow, there's a jump. Just curious about your philosophy on what's the right time to update. For me, the challenge is always finding the funds. I think that's everybody's challenge, matey. And when is the right time to update? When it's right for you. I hate being forced. The more you're tied down to a contract, the worse it is. For many years, when I could afford it, I would buy a credit card that I would buy purposely to buy the phone, and tie and rip that card up, totally tie it up. You know, as soon as I'd ordered the phone, it was ripped up, and I paid that card off, and therefore I only had airtime. Haven't been able to do that in quite a few years now, so it's been tied down to contract for obvious reasons. Now, so that was before 2016 I was doing that. When my dad died, things changed. How often have I changed my phone? I've changed my phone 3 times in 8 years. Now, some people might say, whoa, that's way too much. And other people will say, what? That ain't enough. And others will be saying, you know, exactly what I said. It's when it's agreeable to yourself. I always take out a 24-month contract. So it doesn't work out, does it? 2, 4, 6, that's 3 phones. Why is there 2 years there? And that's because between a couple of those phones, I went to a SIM only because there was nothing that I wanted. And these were at 2 distinct tails. One of them was I wasn't told that I was out of contract, moved to a totally different company and got myself a Galaxy Note. The first time I got a Galaxy Note, that was. And the second one was moving from the Note to a Fold. So Samsung discontinued the Note. The Fold became the normal phone. I didn't get that phone. The Fold continued to evolve, and I got the Fold at a Fold 5. So you can imagine, I had a Note. I then had a Note 20, the last one, refurbished, 3 years into a contract, stayed with that phone, went to a Fold 5, which is what I've got now, and here I am in a mess because on the Fold 7 there's no stylus. And if you've ever noticed about anything that I've just said, all the Note range of phones, including the early Fold phones, had a stylus. So there's the reason. Obviously there's certain reasons as well, like battery life, all of those sort of things. I do let my phone drain. I then let it power up totally. I don't generally charge the phone if it's at 50%. It generally works out for me because my phone gets to about 30% around about 7 at night, and then by the time I go to bed 9-10, it's time to put the phone on charge. So it works out. But the phone obviously degrades in the battery, the operating system. The operating system requires far more computation, and it generates more heat. Heat then takes away, you know, all of that type of work takes away battery power, and you tend to find that your battery therefore is dying quicker. My phone stays all the way to around about 60% by midday, and I start at about 7 in the morning. So it lasts quite a time, and you know, I'm rarely putting it on charge during the day. Great. Maybe it's because I use very little of the phone's capabilities. I'm not a youngster and I'm not excited about phones anymore. I can go even this year if I wanted without getting another phone. What I did do was just get another phone because it's I believe that the next phone that comes out, the Z Fold 8, won't have a stylus either. And I want the stylus. So I'll let all the other phones get caught up with that. It's a bit of a tricky one because the Fold 7 can have a stylus. It's called what they call an active stylus, but it's not the same as the actual S Pen. Do your research on that if you're interested. But anyway, that's my answer to that, Martroid. A very boring one, really. When you feel you need to, and not before. If you can get away with that. If you can't, it's necessity. So there's a simple answer to that. Salute, my friend. Thank you very much. And we move to Colin Jones, aka Ponder. And let's see what he's put. He's put, I hate the cold weather, but not as much as I hate it raining constantly. Fair enough. As for the computer, run a spin right level 3 scan on it. You might find the slowdown is due to laggy HDD SD, which this will ease. I had similar on my laptop and this made a hell of a difference. Yet it takes time, but it can be paused provided you take note of progress. You probably already know this, which I do, but given current circumstances, you might not have thought of it. No, I had thought of it, and I remember watching your video where you talked about this, and you were talking about how your bootstrap was changed as well that was causing you problems. However, in this particular instance, when I was agreeing about that piece of software, you may have forgot to state to know I haven't got that piece of software. We had it at work, and when work discontinued, I didn't get the license key. Unlike Tree Size Professional, which I got the license key for, and I still use to this day. It was agreeable with my manager. He said that the company's gone dead. You won't be able to upgrade it, so I'm quite happy for you to have the license key to install it. And that's all I can do. I can install it, and that's as far as I can go. So, when it comes to SpinRite, I'd love it, but I don't think that is the issue. But I did go and quickly check, and it's an $89 price, and I just don't have the money. I'd like to use it just the once until I build my PC, but I don't know anybody who's got it either. What I will say to you is this. I love apps and I love the ability to maintain software, and I've also got boot disks and all sorts of stuff that recover data from broken machines. I'm a very big person on that because I did it for so many years. 10 years of probation life I did that for. And I'd love SpinRite. It's just too costly. And I believe that my problem is probably not that. It's a brand new drive, which can still go wrong. I do the normal check disks and scan disks and all of that on it, and it finds no problems. I'm pretty sure like you're saying, there could be something inherently that SpinRite would fix, but these problems occurred when a power cut happened. It basically knocked my UPS out. And that was toast. So it did its job. But I believe it probably did some damage to the 1050 watt power supply that I've got. And it's probably all of the USB 3 connections that I've got now and drives and so forth that basically drain power and caused boot up sequence problems for me. I noticed when I turned the power on, the light blinks on the power light blinks. Almost in time to the hard drive, and yet the hard drive light has also got its separate one itself. So it's not a problem with the wiring because I haven't altered the wiring since I first had it. But I should have a steady power light on, and right now the power light is off, and yet it's on. So I know that there's some power issue here. And just to let you know, I wanted to buy a PC and I've just not been able to. However, I knew that Black Friday was going, and I saw a site that I'll talk about later on that talked about the CPU deals, and there was one CPU deal I could not ignore, and I therefore decided I'll buy this chip now, and it will push me to buy the new motherboard and RAM for it, plus case and obviously fan. But then I'll put the hard drives in, and I'll have a new PC. I might even be able to use this existing case, because there's nothing wrong with the cable management in this case. Nothing wrong with it. And of course it will require a new power supply. And that should fix the issues. Now all of those things, as you can see, if I buy them modular, will be fine. All I need to do is make sure that I can actually build it before the return date is levied onto that processor. It has a date of the 31st of January. So the clock is ticking. I need to get a motherboard, RAM, etc., and all built before the 31st. Well, 31st of January. So that I can test to make sure it's okay. But generally, processors are not that bad. So I'm not that worried. So I've got a good chunk of time. That processor arrives, by the way, on Tuesday. So salute, my friend, on that one. What else have you got to say? DVLA. I have no words anymore. You don't have to have any more. Finished with. Yay! Glad to hear about you, the stuff arriving to help with your mum, but feeling it for your sister having to push the wheelchair a distance again. Hopefully the upcoming get-togethers will allow you and your brother-in-law to resolve the issue. That's doubtful. Really doubtful on that one. Let's have a look. Sorry, I lost the place there. Sending your regards to you, as always. I've got some quite controversial comments, though, using this placeholder system, so it works. I can usually beat the first level of Sinistar, but have yet to beat the second. Always get shot by the warriors. To become a legend, you need to be a hero that never actually existed. That's one way of looking at it. I will look at it like this. I think there are more heroes than legends. You could be a hero by overcoming things, but then they get broken, or beaten. So, there are lots of people, but I think a legend is something that's a status that we shouldn't give away to too much. I mean, I do believe there are legends that have existed. They say that Bruce Lee is a legend. I do question that a little bit, but he is in a way. But my legends are the people that do exceptional things in regards, here's a legend. The person that helped develop penicillin. It may have been just science and all of that sort of stuff, and that leaving out bread and it going mouldy, and the mould is what we use, and all of that sort of stuff. But they're legends in my eyes. Many people will say Bruce Lee is a legend. Yeah, in a certain way. Not to me, but I see the legend status. And then you've got the ones that never existed. Robin Hood is a legend. Yeah. Never existed, written a certain way, became a legend. Is Dick Turpin a legend? Not really. A fable story. Well, Dick Turpin did live, but the stories and adaptations making that legendary status, not for what he did. Is the last person that was hanged in Britain a legend? No. It's all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I get it. Don't get me wrong. In the May Flash, you just rotate the gate to change from 8 to 4-way. I think it's a square gate. Not on mine, I checked. I did check when I got it, but not looked since. I leave it as it is because I have a dedicated 4-way. Not the same as we were talking about, but another feature of the Mayflash. Now, I don't know if it's because there are different versions. My one is about 2-3 years old. I don't know if it's called the V2, but when I turned it upside down and unscrewed it, it has 2 screws, 4 clips. You have to pull the 4 clips together. After moving the screws, it lifts off, and you screw the other plate down, and you clip the clips back into place. It was on the square gate. It's now on the octo gate. Very easy to do. Most of the YouTube videos I saw also had the screwing and clipping position, not twisting and turning and pulling away. So it looks very much like it's dependent on model, or which one you bought, an older model or a newer model. My one doesn't have the Wi-Fi. I believe there is now a Mayflash F700 that has that. But anyway, it's a great joystick. But again, I'm not very good with it at the moment. The XRK controller you have, though, is the dog's bollocks. Yes, it is. So happy with that. Wish I could move it to here, but then I wouldn't be able to put the keyboard anywhere. It's actually facing here. I know what it's like to push a wheelchair with small wheels. It's really tough because even some drop curbs are hard to get over. They definitely indeed. And I felt for my sister. What you say about Christmas and social media, I fully agree with, which is why I tend to not say everything I get. We're very fortunate here, but I don't like it. Like to rub it in people's noses. That's just not me. Yeah, and it's what I was telling you about in regards to the probation service and the fact that there were so many people probation service people that I spoke to in my life working for probation, that I came in on around about the 3rd or 4th of January, and not see some of the offenders in to go to their meetings, and I was told that they'd killed themselves over Christmas. It's not nice, and it happened every year, and it upset me an awful lot, and it was one of those things that I never hardened up to, and I never will. And I do blame certain things, social media in particular, in the pictures of people at parties and enjoying themselves and showing them their Christmas dinners when they're sitting dead opposite each other and all of this sort of stuff. Facebook's full of that. If you've got in your family yourself and your wife or your partner and you're sitting down for a roast dinner, why are you using Facebook to take a picture of your dinner saying, "Thank you very much, wife, for the meal," and then the wife is also then taking a picture of saying, "Here you are, hubby, I hope you love your meal." Right? You're sitting at the same table. Jesus Christ, have a conversation. Pisses me off, and it just does. And it's not because I'm a grumpy old sod, although I am. It's just, where's conversation gone? I mean, I see enough of it on TV, go to Sainsbury's and there's whatever it is, Billy the Carrot or whatever is advertising all these big, massive turkeys and all that sort of stuff. And people can't afford these things. And I don't therefore need to see bloody great big parties going on and people slimming as much drink down their throats as they possibly can. Have that fun for yourself. Do you have to then show it to the world? Do you need to tell your friend, "Here's a picture of me enjoying it, wish you were here"? I mean, is that person going to be happy that they can see you enjoying yourself? They are, in a way. But they can also just imagine in their head out they're having a good time and then hear about it in a conversation the next day, Don't need it. Don't need it, don't want it. Simple as that, really. You continue, War of the Worlds. Now that is a bargain. Yes. All for $0. Great. Marvellous. Fantastic. So the question is, Christmas is rapidly approaching. How glad will you be when it's all over for another year, bar humbug? And I think you know the answer to that. But what I'm going to do is leave it open-ended. I do a Christmas bar humbug, which will be happening this year. unfortunately, because of work and because of my mother, it won't be a Christmas Eve thing, but it will be broadcast on the Saturday or the Sunday before Christmas. And I'm looking forward to that so much because me and Denny have such great fun. We've got a guest like we had last year, also involved with this. He's coming on. We just need to set the time, the date for it. Because it's not sure if we do it Saturday night, whether we do it Sunday night. Don't know with that, but it's only 3 weeks away. So watch this space. Is it another bar humbug from me? Is it a bar humbug from my friend Denny? You know, etc., etc. Have to watch that and see. So with that, Colin, thank you so much. Every comment, absolutely brilliant. And thank you very much for your suggestion of spin right. Unfortunately, at this particular point in time, I'm just too broke to do that. And I'm pretty sure it would fix it. So, you know, it's one of those things. I've got to go down the line of a new computer. I have got a time limit on it. This machine is powering down more and more. So, there we go. Cheers, my friend. And by the way, he's got a great channel. Please go over there and subscribe and so forth. I think his blog comes out actually on Monday. If it's not, it's the following Monday. I'm pretty sure it's this Monday. So go over there and subscribe right now. And if not, at least remember what I've just said and go and watch that on Monday. We move to the last comment now, Robert's Retro Gaming. And it's got here, this week you have kept me company doing work in my daughter's place. Mostly I was replacing a pair of fluorescent tube fixtures with failed ballasts in a very awkward location. It would have been much quicker to replace the ballasts, but could not find anything compatible for sale. I changed them out for an LED fixture, which is better, but it took me 2 hours. And then you've put 3 little dots. By golly, I never got back to finish my comment. I did finish listening and watching last Sunday, but it was all while doing things. I enjoyed your commentary and your discussion. Here's hoping for a quick end to the DVLA saga, and all the best to you and your mum. Thank you so much. No, that's a lovely little thing to end on. Like I say, it's a shame. A lot of people listen to this over a period of time over the week. Thanks for all the people that do that. Absolutely brilliant. And all I can say is thank you, Robert. I will be talking about his channel later on. He does have a channel. He is Canadian royalty. Absolutely brilliant channel. He doesn't do just Atari stuff. He does other gaming related stuff. And he tries his hardest. And it's very enjoyable to watch and very entertaining. So don't know what you're waiting for. Go over there, get that sorted now. Absolutely marvellous. And that concludes the shout outs. Now, I am going to check on my mum because we've been going for about an hour and 44 minutes. Wow, I didn't think it'd be that long. But I'll be back shortly and we can continue. And I'm back and we've got to the bit. Excuse me, I needed some water. To watch on YouTube. As you know, anybody who's watched this will know that this section is what sort of like what I've been watching this week, which is in between looking after my mum and the time that I've got before I go to bed. So sometimes it can be very quick videos and others can be quite lengthy that I've watched over a period of time. But I always watch 4 in particular in the watched on YouTube bit, which is This Week in Retro, Tecmo and Gadget Show and Chronologically Gaming. And those ones can be as quick as 10 minutes and others can be as long as an hour. This Week in Retro generally is an hour long. They had free subject this week. They were Time Waits for No Man or Console, 1979 Spotlight on Zork in open source, and Burger Time, celebrating the life of a legend. Yes, 3 great subjects this week, although the first one, Time Waits for No Man or Console, I look at my life more as being the computer side of things, but consoles has been a third of my life. And they talked about 2 celebrations, a 20-year one and a 40-year one, both of which I knew were happening. But they were still equally prominent, and those are the Xbox 360's 20th anniversary this week, and the Sega Master System's 40 year. And the 40-year one less so, because I never had a Master System. There's something that I've not really mentioned much. I had a Mega Drive, didn't have a Master System. I was still in my Amiga phase when that was going on. So consoles weren't a thing for me. The 360 more so. I'd progressed, into Mega Drives, SNESes, PlayStation 1s, Xbox 360s, and some handhelds during my time with the Amiga, and in a greater sense at the end of the Amiga's life. There was a big section of my life where I had an A2000 and then an A4000 a little bit later on. But I had the A2000 probably for the longest period of time. And I was doing more creative things, still playing games, but I started to eke into the Mega Drive and the SNES. And it was because, a little bit like the Commodore 64, when I got that I saw a closer thing to the arcades in regards to its sprite work and the game structure. The Amiga was great, don't get me wrong, and it could do things equally as well in certain areas. Just look at things like Lotus on the Amiga through its race games. But there was so much dross in there as well, like Outrun in particular. And then you saw Outrun on even these baby consoles like the Master System that just seemed to do it better because it was geared that way with its amount of sprites it could display, or its color ability, or its extra memory that it had in the cartridges before we moved on to CDs and the rest of it. And so, yeah, I look back at the 360 in particular, and resonate with the connection I'm going to talk about with the Gadget Show, in the fact that I never had a problem ordering a 360, and I never had the red ring of death either until later on. My original 360 still doesn't have the red ring, and it's still working, and it still has the original hard drive that you plonked on top rather than it being internal with the Elite version that I bought later on. I bought the black one. But it started that whole thing of not enough production models available for everybody. And that's the thing where I think that philosophy and that problem, which is still inherent today, should die a death. PS5 proved this, and so did the Xbox X, whatever they call it. Making such small production machines and having scalpers buy them came to mind to me back in the day with the Xbox 360 when the HD drive came out. So wanted that HD drive, and because I couldn't afford the HD player that you could buy from Toshiba's, say, and I'd got myself a plasma screen that was high definition, cost me $3,000, and all I could do was play games and not watch films. And they built this add-on, and you couldn't get it. I couldn't get it for months. I didn't pre-order it because I didn't know if I had the money. I was basically in a process where I had sciatica and I wasn't working for 2 years. So my 360 playing grew a lot. I remember the early games I was playing, the boxing game that came out, Fight Night, that was it. Loved it. It had this slow motion aspect of when you won, that you saw the punch hit and the mouth move and spit come out the other side, and I thought it was wonderful, along with a lot of other games that I was playing an awful lot back then. And it's just one of those joyous times, but tinged with awfulness, especially around that player that I couldn't buy. And it frustrated me, but it made me also think about all the kids that wanted an Xbox 360 for Christmas and they couldn't get one. Now, I never had a problem with it. Social media was just starting, or just started. And there were, again, it's that going back in time and remembering that there were people that were showing on social media, look at my new Xbox 360 for Christmas. And I could just imagine the kids just going, oh, God, I ain't got one. Dad's promised me one. It'll probably be mid-January. When I get it, I'll be back at school. All of that sort of stuff. And, you know, that goes on now. And the scalpers are the worst thing. But it was less so back then. But I can imagine that eBay's still rubbing their hands at all of this. So that was great. And so were the other two things. The Burger Time one is so prominent because I did see the interview with Neil on that show earlier, of the lady that, you know, won a competition as best Atari player. She actually backwardly retroed cartridge assembly and code so that you could copy games to an EEPROM, I think it was. I may be wrong in this instance, but she definitely copied Atari games. So, and she moved into then the gaming industry and gave back, and she partially wrote Bard's Tale and all sorts of stuff. She had a major input, and she died after an illness with cancer. And that's a very prominent story, and I urge people to go and watch This Week in Retro and look up those particular stories. Techmoan, he did a My New Wave motion machine. I don't know if you've ever seen these wave motion machines, but they're kinetic. They slide up and down and you see some oil, you know, going like a wave thing. And what I didn't know was there was tons of those in gadget shops back in the day, and I didn't know that they were so rare to get these days. He spent an absolute fortune on this thing, and it's a piece of plastic, 3D printed at that. But if that's what you want, that's what you get, and totally understand it. I've had lava lamps. I've never had a kinetic wave motion machine, but it was quite nice to watch. The gadget show I've just mentioned, really, their intake this week was Xbox 360 turns 20, and it showed the presenter waking up in a reenactment on Christmas Day that the 360 was launched, because it launched about a month before, and that's why we're celebrating its 20th anniversary this week, or last week should I say. And him just basking in what it was like turning it on, with seeing the new menu system and how games looked and loaded and played and all of that sort of stuff. So that was great. Love memory stuff like that. And chronologically gaming, he's still back in 1982, but he did do a review of a couple of games from 1982 in December to keep it going, but also a video game illustrated magazine from December 82, and look at it. And that was good. Enjoyed that. I like looking at historical stuff. So that was marvellous. Now the rest of the stuff is on and off whether I watch it or not. So there's Dan Monroe Movies, Music and Monsters, which I've mentioned in other previous weeks, but I don't watch him religiously. But he did Whatever Happened to Blade Runner. And as soon as I see the word Blade Runner, I go, right, I'm watching that. Just like if it had said Planet of the Apes. So that was interesting, and I'm pretty sure Down the Rabbit Hole will be interested in knowing that that's out there if he doesn't know about it already. Then we get to a channel called Retro Games, who I find funny in parts, and I'm a subscriber to him, and I do like watching his stuff. The only problem I have possibly with Retro Games is he did how crap were games in 1982, right? And he brought out a Your Computer magazine, but it was more in touch with his experience of 1982 than what actually 1982 was. I mean, there was very little Commodore in it, say. Now, you could turn around and say, oh, come on, you're just biased because of Commodore. But it was full of ZX80, full of ZX81, the BBC Atom. I mean, I know nobody who had a BBC Atom. And he touched upon all of those. And that's great, because it gives you some exposure. But if you're going to do a retrospective, I always think that it should be equally balanced. He even talked about the ZX Spectrum. What you have to understand in 1982, at the end, so I'm hoping his next one, because he did say it was going to be in 2 or 3 parts, does cover the Commodore 64 and a bit more of the VIC-20, because 1982 is the mid part of the VIC-20's life. It came out in 1980. It was discontinued in 1984. So 1982 is its sort of like middle heyday period. I had a VIC-20 and I had got a Commodore 64 at the end of 1982. And so the VIC-20 was very, very much in my sights. And I knew about the ZX80 and 81, and it would have equally have covered that. So that's the only thing I've got to say about it. But other than that, it was absolutely wonderful. And then he also, I looked back at his stuff over the last couple of weeks, and he did a top 50 joysticks. And it was the same sort of thing there, but much, much more balanced. He covered 50 joysticks. And that's a lot. That covers a huge chunk of that period, you know, of time where we had 8-pin connector joysticks, going from lever connectors to micro switches, and seeing all those competition pros again and quick shots, brilliant, including the TAC2 and the speed stick and all of those. And it's very interesting to see what he considers to be number one, whether it's by reputation or whether it's by merit. Now, some of the times these things can be looked at from a merit point of view, which is ones I really go for rather than historical reference, because the Quick Shot was a fantastic company and a fantastic joystick. But was it the best? Is it at its spots in the history of these top 50 on merit, or is it because of how many were sold and bought when actually it was a pretty inferior product? You have to make your own mind up with those, but it's definitely worth a watch. Definitely go over to Retro Games. I do get some great enjoyment out of that. Next one is called Tech Notice. Now, the reason I found this one was because it came up in my alerts, and B, it had the title, I found the best CPU deals. And this was on Friday. It came up. It was a live broadcast the day before, which I missed. And it was talking about what is the best bargain CPU for your pound or dollar. And it was in dollars for this. And he was talking about how much money these people are going to lose. Because in America, when you look at these deals, and I bought an i7 processor, I think it was a 265KF, no, K, not KF, processor, clocked at 5.5 gigahertz. And its price was half the price. So I bought mine for £260, £259.99. That was right. Down from 500 and something. Now, you could have said, well, you could have got a Ryzen X3 or whatever it is, but I wanted the Intel because I do some video production work. And in America, you got a $60 rebate straight away. Also, you got a game worth about $50, $60, and you got an extra add-on that costing $150, which if you totaled it all together meant that they were selling the chip for under $100. An i7 processor with that speed for less than $100. They're losing money. And what we have to look at is next year, I believe prices are going to go up. RAM is going up for definite. So my headache now is the next thing I need to buy is the board and the RAM quick. Okay, because RAM next year is going to go up drastically. And I want at least 32 gig and if possible 64. So, yes, the clock is ticking. But it was a great show to watch, and there are some bargains, and if they're going on still while you're watching this, go and have a look, because I'm not quite sure, with tomorrow being the 1st of December, that they'll still be there. Then I watched Late Night Vault. This is a retrospective of a show I used to watch back in the day, and it's called the video was called The Brutal Truth on Morecambe-Mindy's Downfall. So it's Morecambe-Mindy, and it was about Robin Williams, and what a sad loss we have with Robin Williams. And I remember Morecambe-Mindy, and I do remember thinking that the first 2 seasons were just absolutely fantastic. The third one less so, and the fourth one it didn't even resemble Morecambe-Mindy from my perspective. And some people were commenting in there saying, yes, it was Mr. Winters, who was a comedian that Robin Williams loved, that he brought in. And he was the baby. But the joke was that you were born an adult and you went to childhood, which is why Mork is such a child, because he's going backwards for his life. But when they introduced him, the humour just seemed so childish it was not worth watching. They brought things in like titillation, really, with women space people that came from Orc, and although exceptionally played by, I think it was Raquel Welch, you gotta turn around and go, you're doing that to bring the adults in because you're seeing cleavage and all of that, and women in spandex and all that sort of stuff. And when I was looking at the Downfall, I thought it was because of the storytelling, but actually it was the stuff that was going on in the background. The execs moved it from its time slot to a slot that didn't suit it. So this show came on at the end after Happy Days, but was moved to a totally different time and a totally different day, and it lost its audience. And this happened about midway through season 2, so it was interesting. So I really like that. I won't say any more about it because I want you all guys to go and watch it if you're interested, but it was very interesting. Then there's a channel called Easily Distracted Games, but there's also other channels, Cold Beer and a load of others. This was the best Black Friday Steam deals. Now, I'm a big collector of games. I much prefer to buy them physically, but of course I have a big digital library of good old games and Steam games. And if a game drops by 90%, it catches my eye. I go, I can afford $2.99. Yeah. Can't afford $30 odd, 30 odd pounds. Can afford $2.99 or $2.99. Yes. And if it's just something in there that meets what my taste at the moment, which would probably be colony games, RTS games, survival games, those sort of things, or something dipped in retro, like a remake of Darius or R-Type or something like that, and it drops to 90%, I'm there. So I watched a lot of these this week. I didn't buy that much this year. I think I bought 6 games. But they were no more expensive than £5 each one. Most of them were in the 79 pence to 1.99 range. Because that's where I currently stand with everything. Then there was a channel called Mars Brunei. Yeah, that's right, Mars Brunet, an artist. This came to my attention because of a new subscriber to the channel, and in there was an episode called How to Draw Poses in 2 Minutes. And this intrigued me because when I started to draw, I started to read things like How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way and all of this sort of stuff. And it told you how to break down hands into squares and circles and ellipses and stuff. This was talking about poses. So this guy was teaching you how to do the backbone down to the side. So you actually had the structure of the pose, which could be bent over or leaning back or whatever. And then you draw around that. And that intrigued me. So that was brilliant. I watched that and started to practice on my laptop here, which has got a touch pen. So, yeah, that was brilliant. Worth a watch if you're an artist. Wee Bob Art might already know that one, and he's shouting out going, "You got the name wrong, you daft shit." But there you are. Just look up the channel. Just look up the video, How to Draw Poses in 2 Minutes. You'll find it. Next one was BAFTA Guru. This goes back to an earlier conversation I mentioned earlier, because the video was called Behind Closed Doors with Ridley Scott. And Ridley Scott, as you know, directed Alien, and so he did talk a little bit about Prometheus, and that goes back to the earlier story that I was talking about in regards to Prometheus. And I learned an awful lot about what he was saying in there. It is from several years ago, which is why Prometheus was being mentioned, and we've had several films since that point. But he makes a lot of sense, and Ridley Scott is one of my favourite directors, so that was brilliant. And then the last thing I watched was something I've watched a couple of times before, not this particular video, but from the creator called Oliver Harper. He does retrospectives on films, and he did Supergirl, the movie retrospective review. Not many people talk about Supergirl. Supergirl's not well loved. Came out in 1984, I think. Had a Jerry Goldsmith score, which nobody turns around and says is a bad score at all. It's just Supergirl. And the problem with it is Superman was on the decline. Superman 3 had come out. Superman 4 was on the cusp of coming out. Superman was done to death to the point where Christopher Reeve was dissing himself on it, which is why he's not even in the film, Supergirl. But the whole history of it is not like the comics. Again, it's a character and stuff that was written for the film, not the comics. This is where the bad side of comics and movie adaptations come in. At least they're better now, but back then it was, who's this character? You know, it's like Spider-Man, the TV series. How many villains from the comic books were in the actual production? None. You know what I mean? And then it was about magic, which is a bit weird. And then it was about a story of a power source that if they don't get that power source back, Krypton will die quicker, which, you know, it exploded, so where's the dilemma? And then all the way through the film, you don't see what's going on Krypton for there to be any dilemma at all. So yes, it had some issues, but overall, the Supergirl character was actually played very, very well. You did have, I think, Peter O'Toole in it, if I remember rightly. Fantastic actor who didn't get the story at all and did the best he could. And there's all sorts of history that's inside that film. And it's definitely from a male perspective, a girl embodied film from a male perspective, which just goes to show you where we were back then. But it doesn't make it any less enjoyable, because I remember my sister watching that, and I don't think she hated it. But it was, again, a superhero character, so she wasn't really that disgusted by it. She was going out by then with blokes and stuff. So I think anything that had girlfriend boyfriend type potential in a film she liked, but that's a guess. So I can only say on that one, but I don't remember her turning around and saying it's crap. So that was good. That's what I watched on YouTube. So we move to film, TV and soundtrack, and we get to Ian Hill, The Ramblings. what a guy, and what a lot of stuff he's brought out. So we have got the top 5 historical films between 1941 and 1947 from his perspective. Doctor Who review of Unearthly Child. He's gone back to the 60s and doing William Hartnell, and he's going to show off his DVD collection of William Hartnell Doctor Who episodes. Not ones he hasn't got, I don't think. X-Files review, Season 5, Episode 7 review. SFX magazine came out this week, so it's the December issue, so he reviewed that, and he did a live with me. Now, absolutely fantastic. I watched every single one of those, got great enjoyment, especially the Doctor Who. And why you're not subscribed to him, I don't know, but that's totally up to you. But I'd definitely go over there and give it a look. And if you do like what you see, hit the like and subscribe to him. Definitely brilliant. Moving on, I saw Mondo Celovic Movies. He actually did something I could watch this week because it wasn't member stuff. It was 4K and Blu-ray pickups and an update on his channel. And it's very encouraging to hear his life is going forward for the better. He's got a new job. It's filled with trepidation for the channel for himself, but he's doing everything he can. And the reason for that is he does shift work. And when he's going for his new job, he'll be working a 9 to 5. That's such a dread for people that are content creators, big changes like that. So I'm wishing him all the best on that. And his 4K and Blu-ray pickups were absolutely brilliant this month. Absolutely fantastic. Through the Lens is next. My friend Josh, he did a short on the Formula One, and he put there for sports lovers. He did like that film, but it really is for people who like that sort of thing, racing films, that sort of stuff. Even though if you are a big Formula One fan, I know a lot of people that go, nah, it's not like that at all. And I recognise that as well. So I think it's an everyone film. I do think you'll get greater enjoyment if you've got a sort of interest in it. If you've got a really big passion for it, you'll knock the shit out of it. But that's like anything though, isn't it, at the end of the day? So then we move to Did You See That? Always entertaining to watch him. I watched his review of Wicked for Good. It's the new Wicked film that came out. He said it's a mess. I won't go into any more other than that, but it's entertaining to think what is a mess about this particular film. So go and watch that. Then we got my friend Jamie Muckman-Movies. He's done his shorts, his alphanumeric November challenge. He went S to X, I believe. I don't think he's gone further than X at the moment, but he did put out a post to say that he wasn't very well and would try to get back as quickly as possible. And even I know that he's got an upcoming video that I think is out today of his November purchases, which I always look forward to. So I'm looking forward to that after I've recorded this. Moving on, we've got to... Oh, by the way, Muckman, fantastic. Please keep up your good work. And if you're not subscribed to him, go over there. And it's the same for Jim Jam Movies, a person who I've met. He's just celebrated his 40th birthday, so he wanted to show off what he got for his 40th birthday. It doesn't come across as, oh, look at me and look at all my stuff, and isn't it great? It definitely was an event for him, and that's how it come across and how I took it, so that was brilliant. He got so much stuff, dead jealous. And he did also an out and about. He hasn't done a number of those, but he wanted to do, he called it the return. So that's quite good if you like those out and about videos where people go into charity stores and just see what's out there cheap. He missed a bargain though. There was one there about Wolf Hall, which was a Blu-ray BBC for $1.99, and he put it back on the shelf, and I was going, you stupid sob, pick that up. I was shouting at the screen. I'd have bought that like a shot. And then we've got Commode and Mayo's Take. As you know, I used to listen to Radio 2 and the movie reviews that Simon Mayo used to do. They're now on YouTube. And they did Zootopolis 2, I think, is the review this week, which is a follow-up and is a great film. But he also did Pillion, Christie, and the Box Office Top 10. So there's always something there for me to listen to, and I've been watching and listening to that now for quite a few months, where it's the new home for it after moving from radio. And lastly, we've got Game and Tech YouTube. These are my friends that I've known for many years. They've got their channel, so please, I'm not going to keep saying go and subscribe to them. Every single one I'm subscribed to of this list down here, and they all do great work. And we start off with Down the Rabbit Hole, Canadian. Another Canadian who's great, who's been a big supporter of mine. He did a couple of videos, Star Frontiers, which is a role-playing board game. Tech Never Changes. It's an interesting take on the 80s a little bit and that board game. And he also did Playing Vectrex Speed Freak, which was absolutely brilliant. I think he's brought out another video that I haven't got quite caught up with yet, but it came out, I think, yesterday. So I'm looking forward to that. Yes, I remember what it was. The video was about June, but I haven't watched it yet. Now, it's about the older version of June, so I'm pretty sure my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings, will be interested in that video, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to love every minute of it, because I'm a big fan of the original June, more than the newer one, and that's saying something, because that's a brilliant set of 2 films at the moment that you could go and watch, and the TV series as well. So yeah, he's talking about the old June, and salute, my friend, keep coming out with your stuff as well, absolutely brilliant. We're moving to Canadian royalty now, Robert's Retro Gaming, who I mentioned earlier on. Absolutely fantastic stuff this week. What did he do? So he did Dwarf Fortress Classic episode 15, Minecraft Play episode 170, Jesus man, SNES Play Secret of Evermore, that's it. I used to play on the SNES, so I remember a little bit about that one, but I didn't play it much. Commodore 64 gameplay Montezuma's Revenge, which unfortunately had a problem with it the first time I watched it, but when I watched the second one, it was the same one. I didn't see any changes. I haven't mentioned that to him, but I looked at it and I'm still seeing jumping about. I don't know if it's to do with the recording or not, but hopefully that hasn't took away how good his videos are. I still got great enjoyment out of it, and I haven't seen any other issues like that in other videos, so I think they're all resolved. But he did some Atari 8-bit play, and that was Atari Safari, Numtris or Numtris, and Alien Attack. So that was brilliant. He did Alien Attack literally only this morning for me. It would have been last night for you guys in the States. But it was interesting. Couldn't quite make out the character he was controlling at one point, but I found it eventually. I went, oh, that's where he is. But I was watching on my fold phone, so it's only got a screen that big. So there you go. Wasn't watching it on a big screen. Wonderful stuff, Robert. Thank you very much. I hope you get lots and lots of subscribers. I hope people watch your stuff more and more often. If I've helped in even a small way, I'm pleased to do so. But I only do it because I watched it and I love it. I think it's fun. Moving therefore to my friend Steve's Gaming, who I haven't seen for a while, but he's done what they call a channel update and a game BBC Squeak Eliza. The game was funny to watch. Oh my God. Because he got so frustrated with it and its flaws are astronomically bad. But he did a channel update, and the reason we haven't seen him is there's a lot of work going on in his flat, and it's going to go on until January. It probably explains why he hasn't commented on the Steve and Delboy challenge, because he normally would, or a comment. He's basically finding it really difficult to concentrate with all the banging and noise and everything. You know, it must be really distracting for him. So it's totally understandable, you know. So go over to Steve's Gaming. It won't be long before he'll be back out of that horrible situation he's in, and he'll be coming out with so many enjoyable games. And I believe he's doing a Days of Christmas, Games of Christmas. So, yeah, marvellous. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to watch starting tomorrow. Yeah, brilliant. Then we've got Colin Jones, a.k.a. Ponder, who did... I think it's called Airfix Dogfighter on Linux. He loves his Linux, does our Colin. So that was entertaining to watch. I really did like that. So definitely go over there. And I believe his Vblog is due either tomorrow or next Monday. So definitely worth you going and have a look today. Then we got 20th Century Gaming. He did a couple of videos this week. C64 live stream of Stormlord 2 and a live stream last night of 1985 games on the Commodore 64. But the sad news is that he's moving to Twitch to do his live stuff. I don't know whether that means that I won't see much of him now on YouTube. It is a shame because I don't use Twitch. I tend to find that Twitch to me is annoying. So I rarely spend any time over there. But I don't want to lose looking at his stuff. So I'm hoping that some of the stuff does move across. But if it doesn't, I'll still keep in touch with him. He's an absolute marvellous guy. And we moved to Mainmeister, who did a live stream of reiterations of Manic Miner across different systems, which is brilliant. And a ZX Spectrum spotlight on a new Donkey Kong game, which he loves Donkey Kong. I mean, he played that when I was at the Zap event a couple of years ago. I unfortunately, when I tried to play it, I was on the right hand joystick, not the left, and that was broken. So I couldn't go up the ladders. That was a waste of time for me, but from his point of view, I saw his exceptional skills on the game, so that was brilliant. I didn't see a Friday Waffle this week, but he might be very busy at the moment. So I'm sure that he'll be doing a Sunday stream tonight, as he mostly does. So that's great, and it brings me to the last one, LFC Gamer and Vlogs. It was the last thing, really, from my friends that I saw this week, which was my top 20 ZX Spectrum games, which is always entertaining because I like the fact that they don't try and hide anything by saying it is my list. It's not anybody else's, mine. Right? And that's the important thing. If you read that and go, oh, mine's not there, what the bloody hell's going on? This ain't the top 20 at all, load of shit. It's my top 20 ZX Spectrum games, which is why I never understood people that thumb down and do all that sort of stuff. Read English. That's what I've got to say to that. So there's not much else to do now. I'll see if my overhead cam's on. Pretty sure it is, but I haven't tested it before this. Yes, it is. It's on. These are the two things that came this week, and that's all there is. There's only two. I am cash strapped. It is the end of the month, and we haven't had my mum's pension money, so I've had to spend an awful lot of mine. And my sister's done exactly the same. She's been equally putting in as much money in, and it's just a terrible time. But this came, it was the Steelbook of The Conjuring Last Rites, which was the film that came out this year. You can see it's from HMV. I'll hold it up to the camera so you can read the text. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I do like the Conjuring films. It's one of my sister's favourites, is The Conjuring. I'm not such a big fan. But that's good. And this one I'm really looking forward to watching again. I've watched this year already. It's been on telly. And I watch it most years. And that is The Apartment with Jack Lemmon. Jack Lemmon is one of my favourite actors. Him and Walter Matthau just make me laugh so much, especially in The Odd Couple and Grumpy Old Men and all of that sort of stuff. But this is a Billy Wilder film. My favourite Billy Wilder film is Some Like It Hot. Anybody that knows me knows that. But Shirley MacLaine knocks it out of the park in this film. It's very much a period piece of its time. It's an Arrow production, so it's got no end of extras. I'll just show that quickly. Look at that. Look at the extras that are on there. It's a 4K black and white release, so it's going to look exceptional, I'm pretty sure. And there we go. And, to be quite honest, Jack Lemmon, Billy Wilder, you put those two together and it's just fun. Time of fun. But it's a period of time where living in a city in the States was something that was pretty hard to do. A lot of people that were execs commuted into the cities, worked and commuted out. But in this period of time, some of them would say that they're working late, and a lot of them had affairs, and they wanted people that lived in the city to get hold of them so that they could bring their girlfriends, the affair that they were having, to that apartment, and that meant that the person had to leave the apartment and go off and go to the pictures or something. It is a lot of that in this film, but it's also got Shirley MacLaine knocking it out the park as one of these people that somebody's having an affair with. It fails. During one Christmas, she tries to commit suicide. Jack Lemmon gets involved, saves her life, all that. But it's fun. It's a fun film. It's not supposed to be bleak, but it has those bleak overtones, and that's because comedy has to have some type of tragedy in it, I think, to be great. Even slapstick. Laurel and Hardy has got some tragic in it. So that's just my take on things, and that's the end. Nothing else to say other than thank you so much for watching. It's been an absolute blast. It's been an interesting week. My sister's been a fantastic carer for my mum this week. It's been a hard week. It's had some highs. It's had its lows. Lots of issues, money, whatever. They're all there day to day. I'm dreading Christmas. I'm in many ways. It won't be a normal Christmas for me. Christmas used to be just me and my mum, and I would go out of the room when guests would arrive so that they could be with my mum. And with the caring duties, I know that that's not going to happen, and Christmas is going to be spoilt to a point. But it's going to be what it is. And in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to a funeral for my mum, one of my mum's best friends, when we get the news about when that is. Ever since COVID, anybody will know that funerals are never in a week these days. They're over 2 weeks or 3 weeks away from the death, and so that's going to be hard. But I've got my driving license back, and holidays are coming, so let's see what happens, shall we? And with that, thank you very much for watching. Salute and all of that. Roll on the next one, and I hope to have some more videos out as well. See you next time, and thank you. Bye-bye.